When a pilot talks about flying an airplane over the Atlantic, they typically have a solid reason to go. Crossing an ocean just because it's there went away when legendary pilots made the first crossings in the late 20s and 30s. With an invitation to join master ferry pilot Margrit Waltz as she helped to deliver a brand new TBM 940 from the factory in Tarbes, France, to a dealer in Connecticut, we had our mission. I started my orientation to the 940's flight deck with Daher's Christian Pratt the day before we launched the ferry mission on November 15th. With a solid briefing on the G3000 and where to find systems information, the pages of the POH clicked into place in my mind. The next day, we planned for a start at noon. With 2 segments less than 3 hours each and gaining an hour, this put us in a good position weather-wise and timing-wise at the airports we'd aim for on day 1. We called for an engine start at the Daher ramp at Tarbes, and we were ready to go. We're on course to Wick with a stuff bag full of waypoints as required by our original flight plan through the UK airspace. We'll lose a lot of these as we make our way north. We end up crossing the French coast near Mont Saint-Michel. We're making good time at flight level 280, where we would stay for 95% of the trip. We're also running at 100% torque, which is where we'll stay too, unless we need to dial it back for a longer leg. We set up for the approach to Wick. Turns out we need it to come down through a stack of layers, some of which offered up a bit of ice. I was expecting that. After a minor tussle with the stiff crosswind, which was 26 gusting to 35 with the crosswind component right at limits, Margrit sticks the landing, and we taxi up to Far North Aviation for fuel, hot tea, and Kit Kats. The rain and wind have slacked off from their sideways pelting as we load up again, headed for Keflavik, Iceland. We're racing the sunset on this leg. The airport at Wick closes at 1700 local when it's already dark this time of year. Keflavik Airport stays open late enough, but our preference is to get inside of land before dark. At least mine is. After landing at Keflavik, Margrit calls for fuel, and the FBO lineman from Southair waits with us on another cold ramp as we top off in preparation for tomorrow's departure. The weather looks mostly good, except there are headwinds on the most direct route to Goose Bay in Labrador, Canada. Based on this, Margrit plots a proposed course to Iqaluit with Sonderheim in Greenland as an alternate if the winds are too strong along the way. She files with CanPass, and we prep our Arrive Canada documents, our nod to COVID times on the trip. We wait for the frost to clear the next morning, and around 1000 local we depart, with the sun just coming up over Iceland's volcanic mountain ranges. We manage a fairly straight climb to flight level 280, where Margrit will dial power back to manage against the headwind, which has begun in earnest before we're even partway to Greenland. Fortunately, the winds continue to perform as predicted and slack off as we reach our decision point, abeam the Sonderstrom Air Base near the west coast of Greenland. We need to have enough fuel on board to land with nearly an hour's reserve, according to policy, and that's what we have as we cross Greenland's rugged, fjord-laden coast. We approach the eastern coast of the Nunavut province in Canada, and we transition to Gander Domestic about 65 nautical miles east of Avput, and then on to Montreal Centre at 63 degrees west longitude. We've been position reporting the old-fashioned way across Greenland, and we're still outside of radar coverage. Margrit sets up for the ILS runway 34 into Iqaluit. There's a low layer of scud near the airport, so we stay on the approach rather than taking a contact approach with Iqaluit radio. There's no control tower per se, but an advisory facility on the field. We land knowing we want our time on the ground to be minimal. It's sunny, but minus 20 degrees Celsius on the ramp, and windy. After we check in with Canadian Customs, we make an icy jaunt to the fueler's shack, where we play with new pup Leo and his aunt Rosie, before heading back out to the airplane. We make tracks out of Iqaluit and point the nose towards Newfoundland, Quebec, and our return into the United States at Bangor, Maine. First, though, we cross the St. Lawrence Seaway, our last piece of water to cross, though it feels like a mere river compared to what we've flown over in the last 36 hours. The Pratt & Whitney PT6A-64 has not missed a beat. Believe me, I would have felt it in every fiber of my being. The approach into Bangor feels strangely familiar. Margrit takes advantage of the VFR skies again and puts the 940 into a traffic pattern for the airport. At this point, we've logged nearly 14 hours of flight time and subsisted for the day mostly on German licorice and trail mix and Icelandic appleseed sodas and glacier water. In the FBO at Bangor, we wait on the last bits of paperwork so we can clear customs into the U.S. with the airplane, another one of the steps that ferry pilots ensure is in order along the way. Then we're off to Groton, Connecticut, where Columbia Air Services awaits, along with our respective husbands and pups. On the last leg into Groton, Margrit demonstrates the strength of the TBM's airframe, particularly its spar, with an expedited descent from flight level 220 all the way down to 6,000 feet MSL. We're railing down at nearly 4,000 foot per minute at times, at 230 knots indicated. It's an amazingly smooth ride. With the sunset over Provincetown and the Cape, we turn the corner into Groton and make the visual approach into runway 23. We pull up to Columbia Air Services, the TBM dealer taking delivery of the airplane on behalf of its lucky customer, and we start the most arduous process of the trip, unpacking all of our bounty and saying goodbye to a beautiful airplane the next morning, one last time.